On today's History of Politics, what I want to talk to you about is the makeup or the contents of the Constitution. As you should know at this point, the purpose of speaking about the Constitution, which we'll reveal later on, is the fact that it is the law. It is how the government is set up, and it's the basis, the foundation, and the for lack of a better word or better words, it is the vital organs of this country. And if I were to look at, if I were one of the founders and looked at what was going on today in our government and in our politics, as opposed to what the founding fathers initially wanted, I would probably try every politician for treason right now. The first three words, the first part of the Constitution is called the preamble. Everybody in America should pretty much know the first three words, maybe even the first six, which is we the people, in order to form a more perfect union. Didn't say that it was perfect then. It said in order to form a more perfect union. It's what we want to get to. And the document that we're dealing with right here is the roadmap to getting there. The preamble spells out what the Constitution is about, the vision for this country, what the founding fathers were seeking, what the whole purpose of everything is. That's what the preamble does. It gives us clarity and insight into the mindset of those founding fathers when they drafted this document. That's why they're known as the framers of the Constitution. They put it into a box, pretty much. They framed it. Not like a picture frame, but it's a framework. And they are the framers. It's the framework of the country. It's what the country is built on. Article 1 deals with the legislative branch. It deals with Congress. It denotes the specific roles of the House of Representatives and the Senate, the qualifications to be a representative or a senator, the special powers that are held by the House of Representatives and the Senate. Article 2 deals with the executive branch, which is the president, the vice president, and his cabinet. Article 3 deals with the judicial branch. In other words, judges and the courts, the federal courts. It gives them jurisdiction, definition, their particular powers, their structure. That's what Article 3 does. Article 4 is relative to the relationship of the states, individual state sovereignties, and so on. Article 5 deals with how we can change the Constitution via amendment. Now, you may have heard me say before that the Constitution is a liquid document. It's a fluid document. And what that's about is that it's made so that it can be changed to reflect society's needs at different periods of time. For example, today we don't really have to worry about the redcoats coming over the hills and trying to take the country back. So we can make an amendment. A perfect example of that, where a new amendment is needed and will probably come about very soon, is the Second Amendment. And here's why. Not as much the second part, which is the actual right to to possess and bear arms, but the first 13 words, which is regarding a well-regulated militia, Well, Congress outlawed militias years ago. We have a National Guard now, which actually takes the place of those militias. So an amendment will soon have to take place to disqualify the first 13 words of the Constitution, thus allowing the second 14 words to stand, which is the actual right to keep and bear arms and the protection of oneself, one's possessions, and one's family. So the Fifth Amendment, or rather, I'm sorry, not the Fifth Amendment, but the Article 5 gives us the way to amend the Constitution to change it to reflect society and the needs of society at any given picture of time. The sixth article, Article 6, establishes the Constitution as, note these words, the supreme law of the land. The supreme law. That's why you have a Supreme Court. They're supposed to interpret laws based on the Constitution. The Constitution, if you think it's just an idea or a suggestion, you are wrong. They are laws. And if you violate those laws, you are to be punished. There are punishments outlined in the amendments. And finally, the Article 7 deals with the ratification process of the Constitution. How an amendment is made into a law. How the Constitution itself was ratified, which, if you didn't know, it goes by 2/3 of the Senate and 2/3 of the House, and 3/4 of the states, or 2/3 of the state legislatures, I'm sorry, which is 30 at present. With 50 states, it's 38 states. You need 38 states, 2/3 of the House, and 2/3 of the Senate to be in concurrence to pass an amendment. With that being said, you have 27 amendments. The first 10 are known as the Bill of Rights. We just went over them. The First Amendment, the freedom of press, the right to practice your own religion, the Establishment Clause, whereas the United States cannot establish a national religion. We have the Second Amendment, which we spoke about also. The Third Amendment right, the Fourth Amendment right to privacy, the Fifth Amendment rights dealing with the courts. The first 10 amendments are your basic rights that were outlined in the Constitution from get-go. They were all there during its ratification in 1791. 1791, the 18th century, the end of the 18th century. After that, now you have the rest of the amendments, which are post 1791. And they clarify and amend certain things. For example, how the 18th Amendment, I believe it was, the 18th Amendment forbade the sale, transportation, and manufacture of alcoholic beverage, and yet the 23rd Amendment revoked the 18th Amendment. So that's how the changes are made. These are the supreme law of this country. The supreme law. And I want you to know one other thing in particular. It speaks of a president, it speaks of a vice president, it speaks of judges, it speaks of senators and representatives. It does not speak about kings. There are no kings. And the reason there are no kings is because kings are monarchy, autocracy, and authoritarianism. And that's what this country faced before it was a country, when it was settled through King George III, who gave nothing to the settlers here, but taxed them like mad. And when he did send things to us, we had to pay taxes, tariffs. Maybe that word has meaning for you, tariffs. But it did take place, and it did happen. And this is why we've been reviewing these amendments, and we're going to review the articles so that you know what a king can and cannot do. Because in reality, a king can do nothing here. But our legislative, executive, and judicial leaders can. And they have to be aligned with the supreme law of the land, which is the Constitution. And I want to say this today because somebody made a comment a day or so, yesterday, I think it was. I want to say this. If you are a patriotic American, your allegiance is to this country and to the Constitution and the people within it, not to one single man, not a president, not a vice president, not a senator, not even a judge. Your allegiance is to the Constitution. When you take an oath of office, you don't take an oath of office to a man. You take it before God, but you take it to the Constitution to uphold, defend, and keep the Constitution. You take an oath to obey and follow the law and enforce that law. You do not take an oath to do whatever the hell one man says to do. Now, if you support Trump, who has blatantly skirted the law, violated court orders, and spits on the Constitution on damn well a daily basis, then you are not a patriotic American, and I'm here to tell you so. And if you don't like it, too bad. It's the truth. A lot of us don't like to hear the truth, but it is the truth. And I'm going to give you the truth. Plain and simple. Whether I like it or not, or whether you like it or not. There's some Supreme Court decisions of late that I have not liked, but I told you about them. I told you the truth of them. I've even had to, as much as it didn't serve my purpose, but I've had to concur with the Supreme Court. However, I also know when they overstep, and I also know when their decisions have been misread. If you learned something today, and I believe you should have, if you learned something today, comment, but keep it clean. Because just like that other person, I responded to them in kind, and you get responded to in kind, plus you may get blocked and deleted. But we welcome political discourse as long as it's respectful. Other than that, like, subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.